Clap Clap is a scary story about a man and woman who get lost in the mountains and come across an old cabin. One day, a young married couple went hiking in the mountains. As the sun began to set, they realized that they were lost. The wife was getting worried, but her husband tried to calm her down and assured her that they would eventually find their way back to their car. However, after walking for hours, they still had no idea where they were. It was growing dark, and the man and wife were getting desperate. They didn't have a map or a compass with them, and all of the trees looked the same. Just when they were about to give up hope, they came across an old cabin in a clearing. The cabin looked as if it had seen better days. It was dilapidated and seemed like it hadn't been used in a long time. Some of the windows were cracked and broken, and a lot of the tiles had fallen off the roof. The husband knocked on the front door, but there was no response. When he turned the handle, it slowly creaked open. Inside, they found it was in a bad state of disrepair. There was very little furniture, and the floor was covered in a thick layer of dust. As the couple cautiously looked around, they noticed a strange atmosphere and a peculiar musty smell. The walls were covered from floor to ceiling with graffiti. Written in red paint, the words, "Death, death, death, death," were repeated over and over again. The man and woman were unnerved. With a shaking hand, the husband reached out to touch the wall. He was horrified to find that the paint was not yet dry. The couple were very frightened, but they had nowhere else to go. They knew that the mountain was dangerous at night and there were lots of wild animals prowling the woods. Despite the creepy writing on the walls, they decided to stay the night. Going upstairs, they found a moth-eaten mattress that was covered in stains. The husband and wife wrapped themselves in an old piece of carpet to keep warm and tried to make themselves as comfortable as possible under the circumstances. They lay down together on the mattress and eventually managed to fall asleep. Sometime after midnight, the couple were awakened by a strange rustling noise. It sounded like someone or something was moving around outside the shack. "Did you hear that?" asked his wife. "I think there's somebody out there." Her husband listened for a while, but he didn't hear anything. He got out of bed and walked over to the window. It was too dark outside to see anything. Opening the window, he stuck his head out. "Who's there?" he called nervously. There was no answer. He was about to go back to bed when his wife said, "Maybe it's someone who can't speak." The husband returned to the window and said, "Is there anybody out there? Clap once for yes and twice for no." He strained his ears to listen. The stars twinkled in the night sky. The crickets were chirping loudly. All of a sudden, he heard a loud clap. The man turned to his wife and said in surprise, "You were right. There's someone out there." He leaned out the window, and his eyes scanned the darkness. He couldn't make out anything in the pitch black. "Are you the owner of this cabin?" he asked. "Clap, clap, Claman? Are you a man? Clap, you're a woman then? Clap, clap, are you human? Clap, clap." A chill ran down his spine. He swallowed hard and croaked, "Did you come here alone? Clap. How many are with you? Clap once for each person. Clap, 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 clap." The story 2. The Policeman is a scary story about a man who comes home late from work and has an encounter in the elevator with a suspicious individual. This is based on a popular urban legend from Japan and Korea. A few years ago, I lived in a large apartment complex in the city. The building was 10 stories high, and my apartment was on the 8th floor. It was a bad area with a lot of crime. I was planning to move out soon, so I never bothered to get to know any of my neighbors. One Friday night, I came home from a hard day at work, and I was feeling very tired. I got into the elevator and pressed the button for my floor. When the doors opened, there was a man standing there. He was dressed in a long overcoat, and his hat was pulled down low over his eyes. "Hello," I said, trying to be polite. The man didn't answer. As I got out of the elevator, he pushed past me roughly and got into the elevator and started pressing the buttons. "What a jerk," I muttered to myself. I unlocked my apartment door and went inside. I went straight to the bathroom. While I was washing my hands, I happened to glance in the mirror and noticed something strange. There was a dark red stain on the sleeve of my shirt. It looked like blood. Then I remembered the rude guy who had bumped into me at the elevator. It made me feel sick. I didn't know where the blood had come from, but I had my suspicions. I immediately locked my front door. Then I took a shower and threw the blood-stained shirt in the trash. I didn't sleep very well that night. The next day was a Saturday, and I had a date with an attractive young woman I had met. I was getting ready to leave when I heard my doorbell ring. Who could that be? I muttered in irritation. I was already late for my date, and I didn't want to waste more time. Peering through the peephole, I saw a policeman standing outside. "What is it?" I asked loudly through the door. "I'm sorry to disturb you, sir," he said politely. "I wanted to ask you some questions. There was a murder last night in the apartment next door to yours. I was late for my date. I didn't want to get involved." "Sorry, officer. I didn't see anything," I lied. "But you may be able to help us," said the policeman. "Did you see anybody suspicious? Can you at least open the door to talk?" "I wasn't at home last night," I lied again. "Sorry, officer, I can't help you." "All right, sir," the policeman responded. "Thank you for your time." He walked off down the hallway, and I continued getting ready for my date. For the next few days, I felt very nervous. My next-door neighbor had been murdered. The neighborhood was really unsafe. I was glad I was moving out soon. I also felt very guilty about lying to the policeman. After all, I had seen the murderer. Even though I hadn't seen his face, perhaps there was something I could have told the police that would help them catch the killer. Sometimes crimes are solved by one little detail. One morning, before I went to work, I was wondering if the police had managed to solve the case. I turned on the TV and watched the news, but they didn't mention anything about the murder. When I was leaving for work, I noticed a bad smell in the hallway. It seemed to be coming from the apartment next door to mine. I had a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. I went to find the building manager and told him about the smell. When I mentioned the murder, he said there hadn't been any murder in this building. The story 3. The Antique Doll is a scary story about a young girl who receives a strange gift on her birthday. On the morning of her birthday, Lucy's mother woke her up and told her a package had arrived in the mail, and it was addressed to her. The girl hurriedly unwrapped the gift and was horrified at what she found inside. It was the most disgusting old doll she had ever seen. It was completely bald, and its skin was cracked and caked in dirt. The worst thing of all was its teeth. They were long, pointy, sharp, and beastly. They looked like an animal's fangs. With a shiver, she took the doll and threw it in a corner. Her mother scolded her, telling her that someone had gone to a lot of trouble to send her this antique doll. Her mother told her she had better appreciate it. Lucy tried to protest, but her mother would not listen. She forced the young girl to keep the doll. So to put her mind at rest, Lucy stuffed the antique doll into the little cupboard under the stairs, behind a pile of shoes where she wouldn't have to look at the ugly, evil little thing. It was not until a few nights later, when Lucy was lying in bed, that she heard a noise, a shuffling sound, which went on for about 5 minutes. Then a brief dragging noise, and finally a scuttling like light footsteps walking very fast. By now, Lucy was shaking in her bed with fear, unable to move. Then she thought she heard a faint, raspy voice whispering quietly from downstairs. Lucy always slept with the door open and the landing light on, as she was a little scared of the dark. She heard the voice say, "Lucy, I'm on the first step," and then loud scrabbling again as whatever was speaking apparently turned tail and returned to its place of hiding. Lucy was so scared that she didn't sleep a wink that night, but lay in fear until the break of dawn, when her mother got her up for school. Lucy tried to explain to her mother what had happened the night before, but was so tired that, when her mother passed it off as just a dream, she began to believe it might be the case. Of course, it wasn't. Lucy begged her parents to let her throw the antique doll in the garbage, but they insisted that it was a present and she had to keep it. So, Lucy reluctantly went back to bed, telling herself that it had only been a dream. She checked the cupboard under the stairs, but the doll was exactly where Lucy had left her. That night, Lucy fought sleep, but she eventually drifted off, even though she had fought sleep. Presently, the deep disembodied voice woke Lucy again. She wondered if she could only hear it in her head. "Lucy, I'm on the 4th step," it said. Then came the scuffling noise, and the voice didn't reoccur that night. Lucy was crying by now, and again she didn't sleep that night. At school, Lucy told her friends about the doll, and of course, they laughed at her. Lucy could only think that if the doll was climbing 4 steps at a time, then there was only one more night to go. That night, Lucy decided to shut her bedroom door. When her mother turned her light out, she asked why Lucy was no longer scared of the dark. Lucy replied that she was, and asked if she could leave her light on instead of the hall light. But her mother pointed out that her bedroom light was so bright it would keep her awake, and said no. Therefore, Lucy agreed to just sleep without a light. She opened the bedroom curtains instead to light the room a little anyway. Just as she began to doze, she heard the noise, and then the voice came, very clear this time. "Lucy!" "I'm on the top step." In the darkness of her bedroom, Lucy heard a click and trembled with fear. She wasn't sure, but she thought she could see her bedroom door opening very, very slowly. The next morning, Lucy's parents found her body at the bottom of the stairs. They guessed that she had been on her way to the toilet during the night, and in the darkness had slipped and fallen down the stairs, breaking her neck. The antique doll was found beside her body and was buried with Lucy. Everyone said what a tragedy it was. "She loved that doll," said her mother. "Now they can be together forever." The Story 3. Intruder Alert is a chilling tale about a man who accidentally watches the night news, hearing of a murderer lurking in the area, and then suddenly hears a noise downstairs. It was midnight. And I was in my bedroom trying to unwind. Flipping through TV channels, I came across the local news. At the bottom of the screen, a breaking news alert flashed. A murderer on the loose. On the loose. Hiding in the neighborhood. Police urge everyone to stay alert. The suspect is armed and dangerous. Just as I started to drift off to sleep, a strange noise from downstairs jolted me awake. It sounded like someone was in the house. My heart began pounding, and cold sweat trickled down my back. I strained to listen, and I thought I heard another sound. A door creaking. This wasn't my imagination. Someone had broken into my house. "I have to get out of here now," I thought. I slid out of bed as quietly as possible, creeping toward the window. My body trembled with fear, and I prayed I wouldn't make a sound. Just then, I heard faint footsteps on the stairs, growing closer. It sounded like more than one person. They could burst through the door at any moment. I had to escape. I climbed out the window and onto the garage roof, moving as quickly as I could without making too much noise. Reaching the edge of the roof, I grabbed the drain pipe and lowered myself down until I dropped onto the yard below. As I landed, I looked up at the window I just escaped from and saw a light turn on. That was too close, I thought. A chill ran down my spine at the thought of what would have happened if they had caught me. I moved to the edge of the yard and into the woods. Once safely hidden under the trees, I started running. I stumbled forward in the dark, moving through bushes until I reached another neighborhood. Clutching the knife tightly, I headed toward another house. The Story 4. Earwig is a terrifying story about a man who places a gruesome bug into another man's ear. The tale is based on an old episode of the television series Night Gallery, which in turn was adapted from Oscar Cook's chilling story Boomerang. The Earwig. Years ago in Borneo, there was a young, handsome, and very arrogant Englishman named Clifford Macy. He thought of himself as God's gift to women and often boasted about his romantic successes. Macy was a co-owner of a tobacco plantation, and his friend and business partner was another Englishman named Leopold Warwick. Despite being older and overweight, Warwick had a very young and beautiful wife, admired and envied by every man who laid eyes on her. The three of them lived in a large house on the plantation. Macy slept in the first bedroom, while Warwick and his wife occupied the second. It was the rainy season, with little to do, and Macy was bored, unable to find anything that entertained him. Over time, he developed feelings for Warwick's wife, and began to wish he could have her for himself. He tried to flirt with her, but she wanted nothing to do with him. One evening, when her husband was away, Macy made a bold advance, only to receive a hard slap across the face. However, Macy was not the kind of man who took no for an answer. Each rejection only made him more obsessed with her, until he became determined to have her at any cost. Though his heart burned with a fierce passion, Macy had a devious and malicious mind. He soon devised a way to remove Warwick from the picture. In Borneo, there was a type of earwig that thrived on waxy secretions and particularly loved human ears. Small and light, it could crawl across your face without you feeling a thing. Once it entered a man's ear, it would burrow deeper, unable to turn back, gnawing its way through the inner canal. This process could cause weeks of unbearable suffering until, well, I'm sure you can imagine the rest. Macy paid 2 local men a hefty sum, instructing them to sneak into Warwick's bedroom in the dead of night and place an earwig on his pillow. Macy went to bed that night with a smile, dreaming of the terrible fate that awaited his friend. The next morning, when Macy came down for breakfast, Warwick seemed fresh and cheerful. Macy observed him closely, searching for any sign of discomfort. Then Macy felt an odd, tickling sensation in his own ear. Prodding at it with his finger, he found he was bleeding. Jumping up from the table, horror-stricken, he screamed, "The damned thing is in my ear!" It turned out the men Macy had paid had made a dreadful mistake. They had entered the wrong room and placed the earwig on the wrong man's pillow. What followed was a horrific ordeal of unimaginable pain and agony lasting several weeks. The doctors could do nothing for him. He lay tied to his bed, his wrists bound to the headboard to prevent him from tearing his ear apart. Day and night he writhed and screamed as the earwig gnawed, squirmed, and wriggled its way through his head, slowly driving him insane. Occasionally, the earwig would rest, giving Macy a brief reprieve from his torment. But the moment it moved again, he would scream and scream. The pain was so unbearable that being flayed alive, burned at the stake, stretched on the rack, or even hanged would have been a mercy. Each time the doctor visited, Macy begged him to put an end to his misery. Then something remarkable happened. Miraculously, the earwig crawled out of Macy's other ear. Though he was on the brink of death, he had survived the torture. When he was well enough to speak, the doctor came to see him. Macy said, "I suppose they'll call the police and have me arrested now." "No," the doctor replied. "They're not calling the police." "Why not?" Macy asked. "I assume they want to avoid a scandal." "No," the doctor said. "They pity you. They know the state you're in." "What do you mean?" Macy asked. "You see, the earwig was female," the doctor explained, "and it laid eggs." Thank you for listening to my video. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe to follow upcoming videos. Have a great day.